Soldiers of Reddit, what are things they don't tell you about going to war? Nobody tells you back home what blood, shit, and gray matter smells like when corpses begin festering, or when the scent of blood, sweat, and smoke sets in your hands. 7 years later, and there's never a day when my hands don't smell like death. It's hard to describe. It always feels disgusting, but at the same time somewhat familiar. Nobody tells you of the shock of seeing what used to be a running, breathing, living human being turn into a lifeless, bleeding bag of torn flesh and bones, and how that transition is faster than a blink of an eye. No flinging around, no flying backward like on TV. I pulled the trigger, and on the other side of my sight, someone ceased to exist, just like that. Nobody tells you of the boredom, hours, days, months of waiting, patrolling, climbing, sitting, lying down, doing nothing. For what? Nobody knows. For how long? Nobody knows. The minutes turn into hours, and the hours into days. Then suddenly everything goes up and boredom flies out of the window. Nobody tells you of the fear of seeing a friend bleed to death and knowing that there's nothing you can do. The fear of not knowing what's behind the next door you kick in. The fear of not being who you used to be. Nothing describes the fear running under your skin when you realize that something has cracked and you can't find a way to mend it. This and so much more are things they don't tell you before spending the best and worst moments of your life. Out on the mountains of a country where the locals are not the enemy, but all the enemies are local. I was a medic. I spent time in a clinic and had to treat the enemy combatants regularly. No one ever tells you about the hatred in the eyes of your fellow soldiers when they bring a guy in that killed a member of their squad, but have to keep him alive because he has information. The most torn I've ever felt is treating a bomb maker a platoon captured. He was the reason 2 soldiers were in our clinic. One was missing a leg, but the bleeding had stopped. The other had peppered shrapnel all over his side and was in a lot of pain. They would live, but the bomb maker was coughing up blood from holes in his lungs. We had to treat the bomb maker first so he would survive. No one tells you you'll ever be in situations like that. They make it seem like rainbows and unicorns when you sign up. I've been asked, so how many people did you kill? I used to get really dickish about it. I think now people know not to ask that. Back when people used to still ask, I would say, I don't know, I didn't keep track. I tried not to count, but I know my number. I was Army intelligence. If I had to shoot, it was because just went really wrong. One thing they don't tell you is how slow people actually die. You shoot someone in the chest 3 times, and the initial reaction is like you punched them in the chest 3 times. Then they fall over when they realize they just got shot in the chest and are dying. A person who is alive but knows they are dying is the worst. Nobody ever talks about the smell. That's what's most vivid in my memory. You watch movies that show war and talk to guys who have already been there, but you never think about what it will smell like until you're clearing buildings or have to pop someone in the head for the first time. And then that smell hits you. Maybe it's the combo of blood and gun smoke, but it reminded me of how your hands smell after holding a swing set chain. Between having to go weeks without showering, burning your own and garbage, and dead people that aren't always properly interred. Yeah, war is a smelly place. The daily realization and eventual coming to terms with the idea that you're not coming home. I lived like that every day after witnessing my first casualty. I thought, that's gonna be me. The anger follows you home. I was arrested 5 days after coming home from Afghanistan for an assault that I was too drunk to remember committing. You'll hate people you've never met, to the point that their begging becomes an annoyance, which feels terrible years down the line when you realize that they lived in mud huts and have next to nothing. Ambushes are terrifying, but you'll prefer the surprise over the ones that you know are coming. The signs are there. Some kid running in between buildings parallel to your patrol, watching you the whole way. Your ANA, Afghan National Army counterparts actually putting on their vests and helmets before a patrol. Every time you squeeze the trigger, it's permanent. 9 times out of 10, you're fighting a poor, disenfranchised citizen who has to choose between helping Americans or helping the Taliban. And he chooses the Taliban because they know exactly where he lives, who his kids are, and how to get to him. People are going to ask if you killed anyone when you come home. Please don't ask people this. This image is burned into my head and made me tear up when I saw it. It was literally our first day out on patrol on our own, and right outside the gate, there was this little boy, around 10 years old, standing on this mound and saluting us as we were driving by. I mean, it really hit me in the soft spot and proved that there are people out there who want us there for protection and security, even though there were attacks by insurgents, but they felt safer with us there. Not only that, but if someone needs help, they flag us down. If there was some kind of incident, they didn't go to the Iraqi army for help. They searched for us and sent us over because they knew we would know what to do. When I was there, unlike stateside, I felt like I had a purpose. I felt like my life had meaning. Every waking day, I wish I was back in the military. I wish my back didn't get f***ed up. I wish I could have handled my mental state. I wish I would have had a more positive outlook while I was serving stateside. It's in the past, but still, it eats me up every day. I guess that's one other thing they don't tell you. For some of us, deployment gave us a purpose, and when we are done, we feel like we don't have a purpose anymore. If you're infantry, you'll go on month-long training exercises in the woods, eating only MREs. You'll get back on a Friday and go out with your buddies, where you all will proceed to clog the toilets of the bar with all of your nasty MRE brick shit. There will be nasty women who live near the base who will throw themselves at you because they want to marry you and get free health care and housing. Don't do anything anywhere near a military base. It's all a scam designed to separate 18-year-olds from their money. If you are in combat arms, there is a good chance you will come out broken in some way or another. Physically, mentally, emotionally, whatever. You will see injuries, dead bodies, and war-torn regions of the world. You will get injured yourself, and it will most likely last. What you see in the military sticks to you like glue. You will randomly remember some horrific shit if you go to war and actually see some shit. Think you want to kill another human being? Great. Until you do it. Rarely does it matter if it was justified. The effects of taking someone else's life are lasting. It will repeat in your head. When you are away, you have zero control and you just have to hope that everything goes smoothly. Family dies, wife leaves, kids get sick, and friends aren't exactly friends anymore. Life goes on without you. Recruiters don't tell you about how you may have to set up an HLZ, helicopter landing zone, for a buddy of yours whose legs were just blown off. Recruiters don't tell you about the countless hours on guard duty staring at the black night sky in Afghanistan or wherever, hoping a platoon of Taliban doesn't grow a pair of nutsacks and decide to rush your tower. They don't tell you that when you get home, your mind is still at war. They don't tell you these things for a reason. If you enjoyed this video, please give us a like and subscribe to my channel. Thank you. I was an intel guy in Afghanistan in 2011. I was on a small camp in the middle of nowhere on the edge of this giant desert, and I did not anticipate the dust. We called it moon dust because it didn't act like regular sand. It flowed like water, splashed like water, but it was dry like dust. Weirdest substance ever. And it got into everything. I had to dust out my intel gear at least twice a day, more if I had gone on patrol. It gets in your rifle and food, and I have shirts that still have that fine grit sandpaper feel after 5 years. The other thing was that a group of people could have a smell. I can't describe it too well, but every now and then, I'll catch a whiff of something and start looking for the Afghan. They stay high over there, too. I've never seen anybody smoke weed as often as they do. I guess it's a combination of bad weed, sweat, crusty clothes, spices, and moon dust that makes up the Afghan smell. Afghan men also have a lot of sex with each other, but they will emphatically tell you that it's not gay. For some reason, the man-on-man activity peaks on Thursday, and science has yet to offer an explanation. And then there's the bad stuff. Out of the 20 or so of us who went out there, I'm one of 5 who are still around. My birthday, comically enough, is the day my team sergeant got killed. You get home, get out of the army, and it's surprisingly hard to find people who understand, people who aren't scared or treat you like a ticking time bomb. I've had relationships collapse because of PTSD. You lay awake at night, wondering, why was I the one who made it? If you're lucky, a friend shows up and helps you through it. If you're not, well, every soldier has lost a friend to suicide. It's hell, pure and simple, and I'd go back in a heartbeat because I've never felt more alive than I was when I was over there. When you get back, people are going to assume that you have PTSD and will be vocal about it given that they have zero military experience. Anything that you do differently is going to be chalked up to some kind of mental issue. And while yes, you're not going to come back exactly the same, I think it's unrealistic to not expect someone to change at all over an entire year regardless of where they are or what they are doing. You'll be asked stupid questions for years. Did you kill anyone? Really? Did your parents teach you to think before you talk? Your civilian co-workers are going to give you shit for being too happy at work just because you have a sense of perspective and don't get bent out of shape about the stupid, piddling minor inconveniences that you face at your new job. People with no military experience will also forever and always try to tell you what you went through because they watched Hurt Locker or American Sniper. I think this is linked to the assumption that all vets have PTSD. What they don't tell you is that in your efforts to make the enemy look like a monster, you realize that a lot of them are just people, but you keep telling yourself that they are monsters. Because if you are killing just people, what does that make you? Your spouse will get on without you. I don't mean that they will just up and leave you, although some do. I mean that they have to keep on living. Those little jobs you did around the house, they have been doing them the whole time you're gone. When you come home, it can be a struggle to find where you fit anymore. It's kind of unsettling that everything has subtly changed. You will be out of date with the rest of the world. You just lost 6 months, a year, maybe more. New music is popular, people are quoting lines from movies you missed, and new clothing is in. You feel a bit displaced from everything. You feel outside of your surroundings, like you are the new guy again coming into a group, even with close friends and family. They can't prepare you for a human being dying in front of you. It's not like Hollywood where they tell you something important before they die. They cry, scream, and piss themselves, beg to stay alive, or worse, they just stop being there. But the biggest thing they don't ever tell you about war is this. Some of you will like it a little too much. Doing things over and over in a specific order sounds really dumb, even when it's just put your clothes in your closet like this, fold them like this. But when the alarm goes off in the middle of the night, and you need those clothes on you, but you can't see them in the pitch-black darkness, you just have to know. Same with the rifle. A guy in my company hadn't drilled it properly, so when his rifle went to shit during a middle-of-the-night exercise, I had to hand him mine while I fixed his. I know a lot of it seems stupid, and some of it really is anal retentive officers who follow the book by the letter all the time or are just plain assholes. But a lot of what seems really f***ing dumb is there for a reason. They don't tell you about the lingering effects. I can't tell you how anxious I get just from walking around corners or when there's a sudden loud noise. The smell of burning flesh will never leave you, and you will never have a good night's sleep without medication. I was deployed from 2006 to 2011 out of Fort Carson. The moment I came back from the first tour, I wasn't the same, and it cost me my marriage to a woman I loved because I couldn't communicate with her like a normal person. If I could go back in time, I would have never joined and just went to school instead. Real life will never feel real again. I am stuck between real life and war, unable to enter the former and unable to completely escape the latter. I went and got an MBA and work on Wall Street now. I have a girlfriend and a daughter, and those parts of my life are so incredible. I honestly probably got the job offer because I'm a vet, and I'm thankful for that. But sometimes I miss the adrenaline. Transitioning from an endorphin-loaded life-or-death job to something slower, cubicle-filled, and frankly less important has been a huge challenge. I have friends now fighting ISIS, and yet here I am in NYC, sitting down with a bunch of suits who have probably never held a gun, never seen a body, and never made a life-or-death call. Yet they handle billions of dollars of money. Their biggest concerns in life are whether to go to the Hamptons or to Florida for the weekend, or which private school their children get into. It is surreal and sometimes irritating when I see what is happening in places like Syria, Nigeria, and Afghanistan, and realize just how little people here care. Sometimes I think about the bodies, about the 100 or so lives I've helped take, and I still feel guilty. The memories don't really ever fade. I still see the dead man with his guts hanging out from a 40mm, the civilian arms and legs flying pell-mell from a fuel truck explosion, the dozens of Uzbek radicals lined up like cordwood and surrounded by flies. I look in the mirror every day and tell myself to make the world wealthier and more peaceful, not because I want to save the world, but because I want to save myself. You do not sign up for only 4 years. Actually, you are in for 8 years. No matter what contract you sign, you are in for 8 years. I did 6 years active, and then I found out that I still had 2 years of inactive reserve to go. But I think the real surprise of the military that nobody can really tell you is how much the government owns you. Body, mind, and soul. They own you. I'm not saying that it is a super bad thing, just that it is a rude awakening. Regardless of how tough or easy your deployment was, regardless of how long or short it was, there's a period when you get home that you will have absolutely no control over your emotions, to the point where you'll be a raving lunatic over spilled milk or a complete crisis on the floor because Bambi's mom died. My point is that things, very small and insignificant things, will trigger these emotional explosions, and you will have no control over what happens for the next 5 minutes or 2 hours. Thankfully, it goes away after a while, usually 6 weeks to 6 months, but for some it takes years or longer. Also, your friends will change, not just in quantity but also in quality. When I came home, only my 3 closest friends would even talk to me. The rest pretty much forgot about me or didn't have time. Lastly, the uber camaraderie is not guaranteed, and for some, it is totally non-existent. Not everybody deploys and comes home with a band of brothers. There is no greater adrenaline rush in the world than combat. At the same time, hearing the screams of friends and some of the toughest men you've ever met in life as they lie there wounded and helpless will haunt you. In some cases, more than it does them. You will be joking with a friend one day, making plans for the future when you get home back to the States, and then, in the blink of an eye, they are gone. It can happen so randomly that you are left wondering why them, and not me. You go from having a huge support group of people that did the same stuff as you did, to being on your own. It was scary at first, but you get used to it. The thing that sucks the most is that you can't just talk to anyone about it. Most people will never experience it. It's hard to talk about without feeling like an asshole, so you just don't say shit. It was fun, though. I'll probably never experience anything like it again, and it makes me a little sad. You will go to the field for weeks or months at a time, preparing for deployment or training in the field. When you finally reconnect with the rest of the world, it's a really weird feeling. The biggest instance is when you return to the States after a long deployment and see all the ridiculous crap the media is reporting. You just witnessed death and poverty for months and come back to people talking about Britney Spears shaving her head. The first dump you take after several days of only MREs will make you feel like you birthed a Volkswagen. You will also probably overeat your first meal back from the field and end up throwing it back up. Another fun fact is that once you get out and go to reap all the rewards and benefits you were promised, you will either get shafted or have to jump through a million hoops to get anything accomplished because the VA is inept. All that said, I would still do it all over again. I got to see so many different countries and learn invaluable life lessons that most folks will never get. Earning the title of Marine sticks with you for the rest of your life and warrants a level of respect from most people. Not just the title, but the discipline and training that was instilled in me. It has gotten me jobs that I probably wouldn't have been considered for otherwise. There will be some really shitty times, but the good times make up for it all. Thank you for watching, and please subscribe to my channel for more content like this. See you in the next video!